A pleasant day to everyone. My name is Jeric Lansang and our lesson for today is about complex obligation. These are examples of complex obligation: solitary, joint, divisible, indivisible, alternative, facultative, conditional, and penal clause, extended with legal explanation and business example. First, let's tackle our learning outcomes. Number 1. Analyze and distinguish different types of complex obligation. Number 2. Identify their legal effect. And number 3. Apply concept in the real life and business situation. Now, let's back our topic. What are the complex obligation? Obligation involving the multiple person, presentation, or condition common in the partnership, contract, and the business transaction. So, in a business, need lang daw ng bawat person behind that business is obligation. So, each person has an obligation to do to make your business successful. Importance in the legal relationship. Clarify who is the liable, prevent dispute, and ensure the contract are fair, complete, and enforceable. In a meaning, nagkakaroon ng liabilities yung mga nasa business, like for example, need nilang ibalik yung pera ng mga tao once na nagka-problem sila sa product nila. And another example, tinitiyak din nila kung sino ang mananagot at sinisigurado na fair sila dito. Joint obligation. Each debtor is liable only for their share, and each creditor may demand only for their parts. For example, tatlo tayo na may share sa isang business. Then etong si number 1, yung pinangpuhunan niya ay hiniram niya lamang pala sa isang tao. So it means, may karapatan yung tao na yon na kunin yung share ni number 1. Solidary obligation. Each debtor is liable for the whole obligation. Each creditor can demand the full payment. For example, A, B, and C are solidary liable to D for 90,000 pesos. In this case, D can demand the entire amount of 90,000 from any one of solidary debtors. For example, from A. A must pay the D for the full 90,000 pesos. After paying D, A can seek the reimbursement from B and C from their respective share for their debt. Assuming equal share, I would seek the 30,000 pesos from each. But if B paid the D from the full amount of 90,000 pesos instead, then B can similarly seek for the reimbursement from A and C. Joint versus solidary legal effect. Joint separate claims and liabilities. Then solidary full liabilities, one may pay all. These different claims and liabilities for joint only their share, while solidary is full.
Hey everyone, my name is Marie Cris Sacro. Let's proceed our topic about divisible obligation. Divisible obligation can be performed in parts without breaching the obligation, common in pays, payment, or deliveries. A divisible obligation is one where the subject matter can be partially performed or delivered without changing the obligation essential. It's an obligation that can be broken down into smaller independent parts. Indivisible obligation is one that cannot be partially performed. It means the objective of the obligation, whether a thing or an act, cannot be fulfilled in parts. In a joint, indivisible obligation is not fulfilled. The creator can demand specific performance from all debtors or convert the obligation into claim for damage. Indivisible obligation example: delivering a unique sculpture commission for a buyer. Divisible versus invisible. Divisible performance can be split. Indivisible must be full. Divisible obligation. These are obligations that can be performed partially without altering the nature of the obligation of them, diminishing its value or purpose. In simpler terms, divisible obligations are those where the obligation can be fulfilled in parts provided each part represent a portion of the total obligation. Example: paying a debt in installment, delivering certain goods in batch. While indivisible obligation, on the other hand, require complete and unified performance. They cannot be partially fulfilled without defeating the purpose or altering the essential character of the obligation. Example: delivering a specific unique object, such as piece of art on a particular car, or performing a service that has to be done fully like a surgery. Alternative obligation, several prestations due but one is performed. debtor usually chooses. An alternative obligation is a type of legal obligation where a debtor has multiple distinct prestation, action, or things to fulfill but only needs to perform one of them to satisfy the obligation. The debtor typically has the right to choose which prestation to perform unless the agreement specifies otherwise. Facultative obligation, only one prestation is due but debtor may substitute it voluntarily. A facultative obligation is a type legal obligation where the debtor has the option to fulfill the obligation by performing either the originally agreed upon prestation. Essentially, the debtor has a principal obligation but they can choose to satisfy it by delivering something else instead. Facultative obligation example, a must deliver a painting but may instead deliver a
Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer S. Bucato and let's proceed for facultative obligation, a legal concept where only one prestation of performance is initially agreed but the obligor or debtor has the reserved right to substitute it with another prestation. For example, principal prestation, delivering a painting, this is the primary obligator. Substitute presentation, delivering cash, this is the alternative the obligor may choose to perform instead of the painting. And this slide, alternative obligation and facultative obligation. First, alternative obligation involve ang maraming pagpipilian o performance kung saan ang may mga utang or debtor ay may karapatang pumili kung ano ang gagawin to perform to fulfill the obligation. And for facultative obligation, nasasangkot lamang ito sa isang presentasyon, pero ang debtor ay mayroong option para palitan ito na mapili mong prestation. Conditional obligation definition. A conditional obligation is an obligation when the extinguishment of right depends on the fulfillment of a condition, which is a future and uncertain event or a past. For example, a contract to buy a house if a loan is approved, or an agreement to pay a bonus if sales target are met. Meron po tayong klaseng kondisyon. First is suspensive conditions. These conditions means that effectively of an agreement or obligation start only upon the happening for a specific event. This resolutory condition. This condition means that effectively of an already existing agreement or obligation ends or it's determinate upon the happening of a specific event.
Suspensive condition example, A pays B if B gets a promotion. The example given is A pays B if B gets a promotion, illustrating a condition that must be met before an obligation, payment from A to B, and become effective. Suspensive condition example, this image display a slide from a presentation or a juridical document, specifically focusing on a legal concept. Resolutory condition is a legal term referring to an uncertain event. For example, the resolutory condition is A return from abroad. For condition and period, condition and period is a legal or contractual concept like relating to obligation or event. Condition refers to a future and uncertain event that affected existence of an obligation. Period refers to a future and certain events.
Penal clause definition is a provision within an agreement, typically a contract, that specifies penalty to be imposed on a party who fails to perform their obligation or breaches the term of the agreement.
Discourage breach by setting predefined consequence from non-performance. A penal clause aims to deter parties from breaching the contract.
So, good day everyone. My name is Marjem Sabalahi. So now, I will be going to tackle about the penal clause and how does it works. So, penal clause example. If A fails to deliver by May 30, A pays 20,000 pesos. So in this example, we can see how a penal clause works in a contract. If party A fails to deliver on or before May 30, then A is obligated to pay 20,000 pesos. This amount serves as a pre-agreed penalty. So basically it's like a built-in consequence that protects the other party in case something goes wrong or there's a delay. So next is legal effect of penal clause. Creditor may claim the penalty without proving actual damages. The legal effect of a penal clause is very practical. Once there's a breach, the creditor has the right to demand the penalty, even without having to prove any actual damages. So parang the penalty itself acts as compensation already. It simplifies the process and saves times, especially in the legal disputes. So next is joint versus solidarity in business. Joint partners share contribution equally. Solidarity, co-makers on loans, each can be required to pay all. So now let's differentiate joint and solidarity obligation in a business context. In a joint obligation, partners share the responsibility equally. So kung may utang or liability, hati-hati sila. Each one pays their part. But in a solidarity obligation, it's different. Any one of co-makers can be required to pay the entire amount. Like, even if one person didn't cause the problem, the creditor can still go after that person for the full payment. So it's really important in contracts to specify if the obligation is joint or solidarity, because the legal consequences are very different. Visible in business. Progress payments to constructor. Stage inventory delivery. So in business, a divisible obligation means the performance can be broken down into parts. So hindi kailangan gawin lahat at once. It's like when a task or delivery is split into stages or phases. So for example, in construction projects, contractors often get paid through progress payment. So after finishing 25% of the work, they get 25% of the payment. Parang installment style based on milestone. Visible in business. Progress payments to constructor. Stage inventory delivery. So in business, a divisible obligation means the performance can be broken down into parts. So hindi kailangan gawin lahat at once. It's like when a task or delivery is split into stages or phases. So for example, in construction projects, contractors often get paid through progress payment. So after finishing 25% of the work, they get 25% of the payment. Parang installment style based on milestone. So next is alternative and facultative in business. Alternative, supplier may deliver goods A, B, or C. Facultative may replace brand X with Y if X is out of stock. So in an alternative obligation, the obligor or supplier may choose between different options to fulfill the contract. For example, supplier may deliver goods A, B, or C. So kahit alin sa A, B, or C ang deliver niya, okay na. Obligation fulfilled na. Hindi niya kailangan ibigay lahat, just one of them. So ginagamit to para may flexibility, especially kung may issues sa stock or availability. It's helpful in supply chain situation. So next is facultative obligation. Facultative obligation, meron lang one main obligation. Pero pwede siyang palitan ng iba. Pwede siyang palitan ng ibang option kung necessary. So for example, supplier must deliver brand X but may replace it with brand Y if brand X is out of stock. So dito brand X talaga yung required. Pero kung walang brand X, Si supplier may choice na i-replace siya with brand Y. So, hindi equal yung dalawang choices. Backup lang si brand Y. So, ang difference sa alternative, equal lahat ng option. Kahit alin dyan, pwedeng piliin ni supplier para mapulfill ang contract. So, pero sa facultative, isa lang talaga ang required. So, may option lang si supplier to replace it kung may problem like out of stock. So, in short, alternative, maraming equal choices. Sa facultative, may backup plan lang si supplier. Next is conditional in business. Contract depends on loan approval, board resolution, or permit. A conditional obligation means na the contract or agreement will only take effect if a certain condition happens. So, hindi pa agad enforceable. May hinihintay muna na event or approval. For example, let's say may company na gusto mag-rent ng new office space. So, pero the contract says the lease takes effect only if the board approves it. So, another example, the sale is valid only if the buyer's loan gets approved by the bank. So, dito nakahold yung obligation. Kumbaga hindi pa sure. So, the parties are waiting for something to happen. Kung hindi mangyari yung condition, then the contract won't push through. So, common business conditions include things like loan approval, board resolution, and government permits. This protect both parties para assure na all requirements are in place before full commitment. So next is penal clause in business. Used in leases, procurement, and employment to ensure performance. The penal clause is a provision in a contract na nagsiset ng specific penalty or amount na kailangan bayaran kung hindi mo mapulfill yung obligation. So in business, ginagamit siya to make sure na serious ang parties sa contract. Kasi may consequence if they fail to perform. For example, sa lease contract, if tenant fails to pay rent on time, may penalty per day of delay. In procurement, kapag hindi na deliver ng supplier on time, may liquidated damages or fixed penalty. In employment contracts, some companies include penalties if an employee violates a non-complete clause or leaves without notice. So basically, a penal clause is there to ensure compliance. So parang may consequence if the obligation isn't performed properly on time. So the best part is the agreed party can claim the penalty even without providing actual damages. So next is summary. Understand the differences among types. Know to assign legal responsibilities. Avoid disputes to proper causes. To summarize everything, first it's important to understand the different types of obligation, like joint versus solidary, divisible versus indivisible, and alternative versus facultative, and so on. So each one has different legal effects and it affects how obligations are fulfilled. Second, we need to know how to assign legal responsibilities properly. Whether you're drafting contracts for business, employment, procurement, or partnership. Clear obligation prevent confusion. And lastly, by using proper clauses, like penal clauses or condition, we can avoid future disputes. These clauses give protection and structure, especially when things go wrong. So in short, clear contract, less drama. So last is final thought. In legal and business settings, defining obligation clearly is super important. It protects both parties and makes sure the agreement is enforceable. Meaning, if something goes wrong, may legal basis tayo to act. Kaya dapat from the start pa lang, malinaw na kung sino ang may responsibility and ano ang mga kailangan gawin. At ano ang mga consequences if the obligation is not fulfilled. So, with clear terms, you avoid misunderstanding, delays, and even lawsuits. So remember, well-written obligation today can save you from bigger problems tomorrow.
We hope that you learned something about this topic for today. Thank you for listening. Again, my name is Jeric Lansang.
My name is Mark James Sabalay.
Hello, my name is Jennifer S.
And my name is Maricris Sacro.
Your reporter this day. Thank you.